People often ask, what is the real purpose of a dog? And that's personal. Dogs have added such a contribution to the human experience. They're so much a part of our lives. Each segment of their life is a different journey. When they're really out there, they're seasoned out in the field, and they just seem to be a second nature to you. They think like you do. Deke and I act alike. And we owe these dogs a great deal. We owe them a great life all the way through, whether it's puppyhood, developmental, when they're in the field, and then their twilight years. And the nutrition that we get them is part of that quality of life.
Training the dogs is one thing, but training the people, that's really where it is, because now they can be better to their dogs. Their dogs can trust them more, and they're going to be more successful. And I've done a lot of coaching of people at Nationals, and it's really what turns me on, is putting together the dog-handler combination and helping them understand each other. And, well, success is bound to happen when you can do that. Hey there, everybody. How'd you like that commercial? I'm talking about the Wildrose commercial. Wasn't that? I'll tell you what, if that didn't touch you, nothing will. We're going to have a great night tonight. We really are. But first of all, I really, really want to thank Purina Pro Plan for sponsoring this Purina Pro Plan Masterclass series. This is our 5th episode of this year. Got one more after this. And if it wasn't for Pro Plan, well, a lot of great dog events wouldn't be doing what they're doing. And so, well, I'm proud to be a part of Pro Plan's team. And I really enjoy these evenings with you. And this night will be no exception. So I just want to fill you in on how the evening's going to work. And remember, down in the bottom, there's a chat box. And a number of you are using the chat box. You'll see, I'll pop some of these on there. Like, for example, there you go. So feel free to use the chat box. Reach out, say hey, tell us where you're from. And, you know, that's the hi, how you doing deal. But when it comes to questions, use that Q&A box, okay? So the Q&A box, when we get into questions, well, there we go. We got some folks from Tennessee. Larry, hey Larry, from Winnipeg. All right, we got Chuck. This is what's good stuff, guys. Just loving it. Just give us a shout out. Remember the chat box too. You can get access to Robin. And, well, we get Regina, Saskatchewan, Oklahoma. Hey, Wendy. Good stuff. Well, there they go. You're all firing up. Team Altum from Ohio. And, well, we got Prince Edward Island and Mount Vernon, Illinois, BC again, New Jersey, Maine, Edmonton. All right. And Robin, well, remember, the replay will be posted in 72 hours. So chat box, perfect. I can pop some of those up. We can have some fun with that. Also, when you ask some questions, Shreveport, I'll see you in Shreveport. Be at the SRS next week. When you ask questions, and I'll pull them up on the screen, I'll read them, and Tom will answer them. Speaking of Tom, let me tell you about our guest tonight. His name is Tom Smith. He's a president and owner of Wildrose Kennels in Oxford, Mississippi. The Wildrose Way, a unique training approach focused on positive methods, consistency, and versatility. insight into training for adaptability in various hunting environments, from duck blinds to quail fields. Tom's going to talk about that. You guys fire some questions away. I'm going to ask some too. And we're going to have a lot of fun. And like Robin said, if you didn't get a chance to see it or you didn't get to see all of it, replay will be posted within 72 hours. Okay. Sometimes we get it out sooner than that. So with that being said, I think it's time to welcome our guest, Mr. Tom Smith. Tom, why don't you join us? There you are.
Hey, Pat, thanks for having us.
Hey, that commercial is fantastic.
Wow. I mean, and Mike did that just off the cuff. It was pretty awesome.
You mentioned that one of them actually won an Emmy. Is that true? Is that
Correct. I'm not exactly sure. We did 3 of those testimonials, and one of them won an Emmy, like best directed or something. And that was pretty cool to be a part of.
Well, I thoroughly enjoyed it, and I showed it to Robin, and she was, rubbing her eyes a little bit, got a little choked up, got a little And I'll tell you what, Tom. I mean, if Mike couldn't have said it any better, I've dedicated my life. When my dad, I was 22 years old, and my dad had an insurance business, and we loved to hunt, we loved to fish. I was in the dogs, I was dabbling in it, and when he said to me, "Son, don't spend your life behind a desk," I'll tell you what, I ran out the door of that insurance agency as fast as I could, and I've never looked back. 40 some years later, I feel the same way. I just there's a video that a friend of mine, Arlie Reynolds, great guy worked for Purina. He said, "What kind of job do you get to go to work with 24 of your best friends?" Being a dog trainer. Yep. So, yeah, I mean, I just love it. I'm so fortunate and I get out there, I train today, and I can't wait to do it tomorrow. So, but we're not going to talk about me. We're going to talk about you, and we're going to talk about, tell us a little bit. We had a great discussion the other day. We had some fun with that, and some of that stuff we're going to revisit. The history of Wildrose, and tell us a little bit about it.
Wildrose has been in business for 52 years, which is not a lot of kennels can say that. And it started in 1972 in Grand Junction, Tennessee with Robert Milner. And he started working with the British dogs, and and then he went back. He was an Air Force officer, and I believe he went back in the Air Force and was doing dogs in the Air Force. And he sold it around 1985 or 6 to a gentleman named Ed Apple. And then Mike bought it in 1999 and moved it to Oxford, Mississippi.
Okay, so 1999, and Mike is really known as, he had this vision for the gentleman's gun dog. Is that not, that's the way you described it?
100%. A dog of duality that is just as comfortable in duck blind as it is back in pointers in the quail field.
So when we talked about Robert Milner again, I started senior in high school. I graduated in high school from 1980, but I was doing the dogs when my buddies were playing football, I guess, when I quit growing and they kept growing. So I figured I had to do something else. And I remember Robert Milner, James Lamprey, and he wrote a book called Retriever Training for the Duck Hunter. And so the name, and if I'm not mistaken, that you'd see that he would write in quite a few different magazines.
He did.
But it really evolved. When did Mike was the one that brought the British style lab in? Am I correct with that?
There were. I think Mike said in '99 when he bought it, there were 3 British kennels in the United States: Queensland, and I can't think of the other one, and Wildrose. So there was a few around.
Tell me a little bit about Mike. You said Mike started at World of Pointers, bird dogs?
Correct.
Okay. What inspired him to invest in the British Labrador?
He grew up, he tells stories about this property we're on now. this road we live on, he could walk 2 miles and have a limit of quail when he was a kid. All
Okay.
kinds of wild bird population. So he was a big pointer guy. And then he got into beagles for a while. And he was training since he was a teenager. He was training the pointers, he was training other people's dogs. And then he was running trials with beagles for a while. And he was also training on the side. He's a retired law enforcement
Okay.
chief of police for Ole Miss, and he started getting some British dogs into train. And he really, really liked their size, their temperament, and their biddability.
Hmm.
And that's when he started researching into it a little bit, and then ended up in touch with Ed Apple, and
Okay.
now we're here.
And okay, so and I wrote some notes down here. In 2001, when okay, let's talk about, because I've heard of Wild Rose. I saw him in Garden and Gun. What, 2001? The DU mascot was a dog named Drake. Is that correct?
Correct.
2009, they were written up in Forbes magazine.
Yes, yes. That is a shot in the arm right there.
So, what made it so popular?
I really think, as we talked about, the duality of the dogs that they can do. We want a super well-rounded dog that is, like I said, can hunt layout blinds, pit blinds, regular blinds, flooded timber, and then take a nap at lunch, and then hit the quail or pheasant field. And then when you're done with that, they lay down on their dog bed and hang out with you while you're watching football on Saturday night. Just a really well-rounded dog that is just as comfortable in the field as he is in the home.
Well, we certainly love a quality dog that has an off switch. Uh, you know, and that's what you're talking about there.
100%. Yep. We want that. Once they come in the house, we want it to go from 10 to 0.
So I started to ask you a little bit more and inquire. I'm thinking, all right, so you brought these British Labs in, and and you do most of your breeding with your own studs only. Well, I started to ask that. That's not necessarily true, but I started to say, well, what's your gene pool like? If you've got 4 kennels and you're only using your own stuff, how do you keep the diversity and the proper balance in the gene pool of these dogs?
We have to still bring in outcrosses from the UK.
Okay.
And you got new ones winning here and there. Kennels that necessarily we don't have in our lines much, or if they are, they're way back. Like Craig Hornbracken, you're going to find him in almost every pedigree of every dog coming from the UK. He was like the most prolific sire over there, and we bring in not only from England but also Ireland and Scotland.
Okay.
So the whole UK is part of our gene pool. And we have a partner over there we've been working with for, I believe, 22 years. He's won the Irish Championship. He's placed in the British. He's a Panel A judge. He's been here several times. So he knows what we're looking for. I'll tell him I
Okay.
need mamas or studs or just finished dogs that may not have the great genetics, but are a great dog. They're healthy, but we may not want to breed them. And he finds them for us, and he sends me pictures and videos and pedigrees, and I say yes or no, and that's how we
Okay.
bring our outcrosses in.
So now it's not that difficult with the world of frozen semen and stuff like that to probably, but at one time that if you didn't have a side by side breeding, you pretty much couldn't do it.
Correct, correct. And it makes it really nice. I have imported some semen, a couple different ones that the dogs are still working over there, retired now. But it's definitely the import game is the airlines are starting to take their chunk and getting more restrictive about everything. So it definitely has created some new challenges.
Well, and there's some kind of scary things going on between us and Canada where you can't bring a puppy until they're 6 months old, and the quarantine things are going to make it way, way more difficult. I don't know where that's headed, but that's been a topic of discussion.
It's not really much different sending a dog to Hawaii. I can't remember how they have to be, but because they're a rabies-free environment.
All right.
So they have to have all their shots and they have to quarantine over there for a little while. So it's a big deal. We've sent several dogs to Hawaii, and it's Lynette's pretty good at it, working with our vet, going through the USDA forms and everything, but it's very challenging for there also.
So I've been going, doing some work with Purina, and I've been to a number of herding dog events this year. And I've got good friends in the world of English Springer Spaniels, and I'll be going to their national amateur in December. Now, as I've gotten to know the Springer Spaniel world, they bring in the English dogs, and there's a number of them competing, and in the United States and Canada, and a number of some of the folks with Springer Spaniels go to England and compete. Now, they transfer pretty well. The world of herding dogs, the sport is pretty much the same all over the world. But in retriever trials, it's very different. Very different. The focus is very different. Modern U.S. and Canadian field trials don't resemble what they would in England, and their focus is different. And doesn't mean one's good and one's bad, but they are very different. Initially when I started thinking of British Labs, my ignorance just showed, and I started seeing the modern conformation Labrador, and I thought, a lot of these dogs don't look very athletic to me.
No,
but
they don't.
That isn't what we're looking at here, obviously.
Not at all. You're looking at more of those show lines you see at Westminster, the big boxy heavy dogs, and these dogs I have in my kennel, they're athletes.
And I certainly, when people say I want a British Lab, most of the time a lot of them talk about the reason they want them is because of their looks as much as anything. That they thought more attractive, and they were a little blockier typically, but not all. I'd look at those dogs over your shoulder. Maybe you can tell us a little bit about them. They're both yellows. But they don't look really significantly different than a lot of the modern field trial dogs that I see all the time.
They don't. That one is Kathmandu Big Red Abdonian. He is sleeping in the living room right now. He's 13 and a half years old. He's retired, living a good life. We imported him when he was about 18 months old, I believe. And this is before I worked for Wildrose. And I was here, and I was here when the dog came in from Atlanta. And I looked at Mike and I said, I will go get my checkbook right now. I want that dog. And he said, I'm going to have to keep him. But he ended up being my dog anyway. So, but he was big. He was about 74 pounds fighting weight, which is a big British dog, but athletic and probably one of the most gentle dogs I've ever seen around puppies, children, people, just other dogs. He just super relaxed. Now, Dixie, Wildrose Dixie, she was my first Wildrose dog.
Okay.
And she was a female, about 52 pounds. And she was probably, we all talk about the one. She is probably my one. She could get out of the truck and look at the terrain and say, oh, we're duck hunting today. Oh, we're quartering today, and just switch back and forth. And she was when I met my wife, she goes, I understand the hierarchy is Dixie, me, and then the cats. I said, yeah, you pretty much got it.
I think a lot of dog people feel that way. What is the God? I saw a great T-shirt about something like that about essentially a wife wearing it like happy dogs, and the dog taking precedence over anything else. And they've certainly been an everyday part of my life. And and I look at these yellows. When I first got in the game, there weren't that many really good field trial yellow Labradors. But I was around a bunch of them before it was all said and done. A dog named Candlewood's Captain Kidd, who 200 all-age points, which is pretty big, a lot of really competitive. And I saw a couple yellows win nationals. And today, you see them all the time. But at one point, people were breeding more for hair color than they were temperament quality. But now now we've been able to, focus on both.
I agree. I agree. Breed for performance and not color. If I have to breed a red to a black to get what I want, that's what I want to do.
Okay. Well, and we've got some questions that are going to be coming in, and I'm going to move on to our second, because I want to talk to you a little bit about, we started talking about a basics program, and I know some of you did some questions, and I'm going to pop them up when it's going to work in our discussion. So I asked you, when you start a dog in training, what age do you start what you would call formal training?
Right about 7 months. We want our dogs to come back for training at 7 months, have their adult teeth, a little more mature, and that's when you really start expanding on the basics, the foundational skills.
Well, let's talk about basics. And I asked you, I said, do you have a flow chart? Can you describe what Wildrose Basics looks like? What that 7-month-old dog comes back, and maybe he's got reasonable obedience. He probably likes to chase bumpers. He may not come back great. Talk to me what Tom's going to be doing with that 7-month-old dog and where you're headed.
When I'm going to back up just a little bit.
Okay.
When we background dogs, we have a checklist. If I background a dog to either keep at the kennel or for a client, we have a checklist. They have to sign off on a training track, we call it.
Okay.
And then those are all those truly foundational skills. The only things I'm looking for when that dog comes in at 7 months, decent on lead heel work, recall from like 15 yards, voice and whistle, a trailing memory, a mark, and a water entry.
Okay, so wait a minute. Now, is this your checklist?
For clients coming in. For dogs we background, it's a little more extensive, but we do an entry test when the dogs get here, just some really basic things, because it also gives us a foundation on what the relationship and with the handler and dog and the method they've been using.
All right, so let me ask you a question so it's clear to me and maybe our audience. A typical scenario. You get somebody that says, I want a puppy, a Wildrose puppy, and I want to put it in training. And so they buy, you work it out, they buy it 8 weeks old. What goes on from 8 weeks? These are the things that are going to go on from 8 weeks to the 7-month time?
Correct. I'm looking for obedience and foundational skills. I'm going to start place training.
Okay.
Denials, throwing the bumpers around, starting to teach the pup that not every bird is yours, that I'm the boss. I start teaching when I'm raising a puppy. I want them to understand they have to give me what I want before they get what they want, because I'm the boss.
Okay.
And so there's a reward. You act right, you get to have fun. So it's all foundational skills, but you're also starting to build that retrieve drive. I'm going to start shaping the hold a little bit on delivery with my young dogs, without nothing formal, just kind of in the field, get him to come in and scoop it under and get him to hold it a little bit. Just the real foundational skills that you have to have before you can start moving forward.
So when you start formal training,
mm-hmm.
You talked, and the first, and I'm looking at it right here, positive hold conditioning is what you called it.
Correct.
Can you describe that?
Yes. Before we start positive hold conditioning, we want the trainers are going to spend some time building a relationship with the dog. We're just not going to throw them on the hold table. We want to build that good relationship and make sure their retrieve drive's good, everything. Once that's good, we're going to put them on the hold table. Positive hold conditioning is low to no force, no force fetch, anything like that. And we start off, we had a Rolfer come in that we discussed, which is a high-speed massage person that taught us pressure points on the dogs to relax them. I've literally put dogs to sleep on the hold table. They'll start just just nodding off and making real relaxed. And then I'm gonna put a glove on and I'm gonna put my fingers in there and see what kind of, see what kind of
Okay.
pressure. Not enough, just right, too much, and start working with that. Then next day, I'm gonna massage, I'm gonna roll that dowel in and start getting to hold, stroking them under their chin, using the pressure points under their ears, holding their chin up, getting real relaxed, using the paw. And so that starts the process, the dowel. And we go through a whole process, the dowel, the bumper, the docking, the launcher bumper, feathered bumpers. Then we start moving it to other locations. We've got rocks, we've got ramps, all stationary. Then we start movement.
Now, this is just accepting it in their mouth and not dropping it. They're not picking it up off the ground at this point.
Not at this point in time.
Okay.
Yep, getting them to hold in. And sometimes they force, one of the dogs I trained did not want to grab it, but as soon as you roll it into his mouth, he'd sit there and hold it all day long. And other ones will just, this is exactly what you want me to do, Dad. Now give me a pet. And then we start the movement. Heel work, reverse heel, getting them going up and down the ramps, confident carrying that stuff, because you know how it is, all the terrain we hunt in, it's all different. They're going to run into obstacles, tall grass, woods, and I want that good hold wherever we are.
So a typical basic session, 15-minute session maybe?
Starting off about 15, 20 minutes. Yeah.
Now, will they get any marks or anything on top of that, or any sort of field work at this point?
When we're in hold conditioning, no retrieves.
Okay.
Just introductions, hold, and obedience. So introductions, getting them in and out of a boat, getting them in and out of the different blind setups we have, walking them through decoys, walking them through tall grass, walking them in the woods, introductions to everything. So that way, when we do start retrieving, they're way confident. They're not being slowed down by the psychological or physical barriers they're going to run into.
So, and these walks that you're talking about, exposure, is also building that relationship with the person that's training.
Correct. And working on simple things like, sitting to the whistle just at heel, because a lot of people don't use. I start to whistle as soon as I know sit, because everything you put in the dog between 6 weeks and 6 months is there forever. And if that whistle's in there super early, when it comes time to start stopping them going away, it's ingrained, and they're going to, no, I got to stop and look at him. So all those little introductions, stuff like that, but no retrieves during hold until they're done with hold.
Okay, so you've done the hold. Keep going with the flow. You don't have to maybe go into incredible detail, but just keep talking.
Pattern drills, your 180s, your doubles, your triples. We've got different pattern drill setups all over the property to start teaching them their 180s, start bringing your angles in, your doubles, your triples, stuff like that.
So wait a minute, you're going from just hold. I mean, when you say doubles and triples, you're talking about double and triple marked retrieves?
Trailing memories or circle memories.
Oh,
we use a lot of memories. We're probably 75 to 80% memories over marks.
Gotcha. Okay, so here's obviously somebody who knows the lingo says, what is your marks to trailing memory ratio?
With young dogs, especially in the basic gun dog program, probably 7.5 to 8 out of 10 for trailing memories versus marks.
Okay, and tell me one more time. Can you give me the definition of trailing memory?
Yes, there are several different kinds of memories. The trailing memory is, say we're on a fence. I walk down the fence, put the bumper down with the dog, walk away, send the dog for it.
Okay. What are you sending them on? Back, fetch,
their name. We use name because a lot of times I hunt with 2 dogs. And if I send 2 of my stud dogs try to get out of one hole in a duck blind saying back, we're not going to have much of a duck blind left.
Okay.
So everything is name. Name, eye contact, command is what I'm looking for.
Okay. So now give me, you got a 7-month-old dog. Give me a kind of a typical timeline? 7 months to 8 months. You're working on the
Probably
hold.
8 to 8.5 months.
Okay.
Because you got that relationship building time in there,
Okay.
retrieving simple trailing memories. And then we do hold. Now we start in just the simple pattern drills.
And when you say a pattern, when I think of pattern drills, I think of like pattern blinds, where you got a three-legged deal, or you're
Do the
lining
same
to
thing,
picking.
except we'll walk us maybe in a circle and put number
Mhm.
one out, number two out, number three out, and then come back to home plate.
So
And I'll start.
when we start doing blinds, we call them walk around blinds. So that's a similar concept. The dog sees you lay him down, and you come back to the home plate and you send him for it.
Yes. So our pattern blinds turn into, or our pattern drills turn into permanent blinds because they've always found something at that specific tree, right? So
Okay.
now they get older. Now we go put them out and send them to known points. We do the permanent blinds before we get into the cold blinds.
Now, are these dogs sitting on a whistle and taking hand signals at this point? Or are they just running
Not yet.
out? Okay.
We go to the pattern blinds, then into backs. 30 days of backs. Because that's the hardest thing to do is push a dog away from you.
30 days of backs.
Mm-hmm.
So are you extending that distance as you go?
Correct.
What distance do you extend to?
I like to tell people these 13-month-old dogs that go home in the starter dog program, they're trained but not experienced. They may have some goat cane
Okay.
shot
Good
on,
way of
but
putting it.
not a lot. And I'm looking for them in the 100 yards and in range
Okay.
until
Yeah.
they get, keep them confident. You want to set the dog up for success.
Right.
Nothing through failure.
Okay. So let me see if what I've got here, because I went by some questions. And all right, let me pop this one. David Peterson asks, does Wildrose use any sort of healing sticks or just slip lead when doing obedience and line manners?
Healing stick I will use, but I will hold it out in front of me and just do this where it's swinging in front of the dog, not whacking the dog or anything like
Right.
you see, but just to teach them to stay back. You can also, if I have the slip lead, I can swing it, and that teaches them
Oh,
when they're starting to,
not to surge ahead of you?
yep. And that, so we use healing sticks? Not really, just mainly the combination lead.
Okay. All right. Let me see what else. Russ says, now I don't know if this is a question, but Russ says your main focus is eye contact and pack leader. Is that a language? I mean,
Yes,
that mean anything to you?
yes, it does. We talk a lot about eye contact. If you don't own the eyes of the dog, you don't own the dog.
Okay.
You want that really good eye contact. And dogs are pack animals. So
Okay. Yep.
one of the big things is why it's so important to send dogs home before 10 weeks is at 10 weeks they start establishing a pack hierarchy in the litter.
Right.
And we do not want to send alphas home. We want them to understand that they're last in line in the household. Family comes first. You have your pack leader, then your betas, and then the dog.
Okay. This is a question about handling. Do you guys focus on angle casting or just straight backs and overs?
We do not teach angle backs, just backs and overs. Get on is what we use. Now, I will say, when you build that symbiotic relationship with that dog, especially if it's your personal dog, they're going to learn an angle back just from you doing
Yeah.
it. They're smart. They're crazy smart.
You're right. You're
And,
right. They do.
there's nothing better than that unreal relationship you build with these dogs that they know all your quirks, theirs, strengths, weaknesses, and they're just reading you like a book all the time.
So I started to, again, quiz you a little bit more about it. I said, all right, you know, uh, a lot of the terminology has become, well, we call it the remote trainer or the e-collar. We used to call it the electric collar. We used to say force fetch. Now we say something else. It's to some degree, it sounds better. It's more politically correct, but we have altered our methods to a much friendlier, more positive way in my world. Is, um, but I said, all right. First of all, I asked you, do you, in your total positive reinforcement, you didn't mention anything about using food reward. Is that something you do?
So the only time I'll use a food reward is eye contact.
Okay.
They're not following me. Get them to follow that and hold it in front of you, and then they get a little bit. But I'm going to wean that off quick because once you start verbal praise and some pets under the chin, they're gonna be like, oh, if I look him in the eye, I'm gonna get rewarded.
Okay.
The other thing I use food for is confidence building.
Okay.
And
Expand on that for me.
well, I feed all my dogs in their crates till they're like 6 months old.
Okay.
One reason is, puppies eat a little bit. Oh, there's something shiny over there. I got to go see that, eat a little bit. I want them to sit down, eat, and be done with it. The other reason is we all travel with these dogs in our dog trailers or our dog boxes. They have to learn to eat in enclosed spaces.
Okay.
Eating in the crate also teaches them it's a happy place. They
Okay.
won't. So that's what I use it for. But we had a dog at 14 months old decided she was scared of the lawnmower she had been walking by her entire life. Just one day she's like, oh, there's a lawnmower. I don't know what to do. And so we started running retrieves off the lawnmower and feeding her off
Okay.
the lawnmower. And in a couple of weeks, she'd walk by, hey, lawnmower, where's my food? So that's the only rewards I use for food.
So, all right. Then I said, all right, Tom, I said, I'm going to say, wait a minute. Now, I've been around dogs a long time, and I know some high powered field trial dogs are not the most uh, worried about being the most compliant. That's not the first thing that comes to mind. But in today's world, the majority of the dogs I work with do want to please, but there's days where they're not good dogs. I mean, they're not that. I part of me says when I said, "Wait a minute, is there any discipline?" I mean, is it there's a it seems unrealistic. I mean, the only dogs that I would think I'd never have to discipline at all when it comes to birds and retrieving and excitement are the dogs that don't want the birds that bad.
Correct.
So talk to me about that a little bit.
So we mainly use our main corrections are leash, long line, and verbal.
Okay.
And usually that's pretty much it. Or maybe, get right in front of them and be like, hey, what are you doing? What are you doing? Get that real deep voice, and they're like,
Okay.
But these British dogs really respond to very little correction.
Okay.
99% of them.
So I remember when I was working for Mike Lardy in the 80s, there were Mike, actually my best friend Andy Attar, and there was a team that went over to Europe to do, they had a retriever challenge, a field trial, so to speak. And so these guys took their hotshot dogs, and our guys did. And Mike said, I'm not sure who it was, Connie Cleveland, I think was her dog, kind of yawned,
Out.
And Mike, and one thing Mike said, he said, that's ridiculous. Well, he said, today in our field trial dogs, we do have a real noise problem with a lot of them. And Mike said, maybe we should have listened to those guys a little bit.
Yeah, if the dog takes a step, a 2-step control break, out. Whines, out.
And the argument on the other side is going to be, all right, I'm hunting the Great Lakes. I'm hunting, well, I found out you grew up in Indiana, so I lived on the other Indiana, Lake Michigan. But, when you're hunting big, intimidating water, it takes a pretty driven dog to want to challenge that. And so the one argument would say, well, how are these dogs going to hold up in that kind of an environment?
We have a lot of dogs on the Northeast who hunt sea ducks, stuff like that. We have a lot of dogs around the Great Lakes on both sides of the border. So they're used to hunting those big waters. So what we do is if somebody tells me what they're wanting to hunt, I'm going to put them with higher drive pairings
Okay.
we've had in the past. I want that repeat breeding so I can make sure they get the dog they want, you know. And if you want more of, I hunt 4 days a year and I want my dog to ride on my private jet and my yacht and everything else, I'm like, okay,
Okay.
we got three breeds over here. So we talk to the clients a lot to try to get them that find that sweet spot they're looking for in the dog.
So are we getting a puppy that's likely to be that way? Or are we talking about a started dog?
Both, both.
Okay.
So if we have a repeat breeding, we know those, and we've had those dogs back for training. We know as much as we can with genetics, as much as we try, as you well know. This dog should hunt with you, no problem. They're not going to be scared of anything. They're going to run through a brick wall, and they're going to be biddable and controllable.
And then our discussion went on to this, where I described, and maybe it was significant to you, maybe it wasn't, but the one thing I've witnessed from my beginning in the world of training, and I'm going to say I trained all retriever breeds, but the modern, the Labrador, that the temperament of Labradors today versus 35 years ago is tremendously different. Our Labradors today are much more mentally and physically sensitive, uh, because we became smarter at how to train sensitive dogs. And we came to realize that the same thing as what you're describing, the sensitive dog is easier to manage for the average person.
Correct.
And, you know, nobody likes to be the bully and pound on a dog all the time who's being belligerent. That's not fun for anybody.
Nobody.
Uh, so we have, even in modern day field trial dogs, uh, the dogs, the levels on the electronic collar that we used to use 30 years ago, and now that they have the variable intensity collars, these dogs use very little pressure compared to what they required 30 some years ago. And that's only one way does that happen, through breeding,
Yeah,
selective
and
breeding.
now you have the tone, you have the vibrate. Those electronic collars in the Bird Dog Hall of Fame are scary.
Oh, aren't they? They look
Yeah,
like something you'd call in air support in Vietnam on. Their big
yeah.
boxes. And
Those
oh
things are
yeah.
like wow.
I mean, I do remember some of the early collars, and that had one intensity, and and only three frequencies, and a plane had set them off, and so it did require a dog to, and the old techniques, whether we were coaching athletes or training dogs or training horses, well, I wouldn't want to go back to it, because there's a
No,
lot of it
way
was
too
brutal.
physical. Yeah, way too physical. It's you're not um and I know animals don't have exact same feelings as humans, but you can get on your dog and you can tell they feel bad. So
Yeah.
they have some feelings, and you're not taking any of that account. Back then we tried to produce robots, and
Right,
and
we did. There's no doubt. There was the evolution, and I was just starting that when the electronic collar came from the old style of training that they trained bird dogs and everything. And we became infatuated with how robotic we could make dogs. And there was a lot of dogs that weren't stylish. You don't see that today.
yeah,
We've evolved, all of us as trainers, uh, in a very positive way. And it's a testament to having you on board tonight, people being here to listen, that people are open minded to listen to other possibilities and techniques, because
100%.
it's going to continue to get better, and the dogs are going to get smarter, and then we're going to be better about it. So, pretty darn good stuff. Um, so, I do have some questions that'll be appropriate here. So, all right. How do you guys Let me read that. How do you guys do stop to the whistle? We tend to use a rope to stop them. Do you guys use it similar, or do you have a different method?
We start stop to the whistle. One, sitting to the whistle right next to us.
Right.
You stop, peep. Okay. Before we start stopping the dog going away, we get them stopping coming toward us, because they got more
Right.
focus on you and they're not so concentrated on going away from you. So we do a lot of pulls, a lot of pulls, pull, stop, good boy, pull, stop, and then turn them around and send them on a retrieve. And when you have those dogs that are always wanting to break on back when you stop them before you even tell them, I'll have somebody down there picking up that bumper. So if they do break on back, they get no reward.
Right.
There's nothing there.
Deny the retrieve.
And if it keeps happening, then I'm going to go to the check cord.
Okay. And I did ask you, and again, I'm going to grab a couple other questions here. Do you ever use an e-collar at all? And would you expand upon that?
I will. We don't use it as a method. Every now and then we will use it as a tool and to fix a specific problem. I had to use one on a dog several years ago. He just wanted to get the bumper and bounce around and come back, maybe, come back not. Condition to sit, couple nicks. Next thing you know, he's coming in like a champ, sitting like he's been doing it all his life. And so the day I put the collar on is the day I start to take it off. And before any dog can go on a collar, I personally have to evaluate it and say yes or no. I say no, okay, try these other methods, then we'll revisit in a couple of weeks.
So these are your trainers that are working, and they're going to come to you and say, I think I need this, and you're going to evaluate it.
Correct. And I see the dogs out there a lot anyway, out there training with the guys. So they'll kind of keep me informed, and I'll watch the dog and, well, let's try this, or let's try this. And we'll group think it. We'll get all the trainers together. Well, what about this? What about this? What about this? I'll make call the other kennels. Hey, have you had this out of this litter? And try to do everything we can to not do it. Okay,
so let me. Russ says, I don't know if you guys can see that. Let me try to make that a little bigger. I got to make the font bigger. Isn't your style of training more the continental style of hunting, driven hunts, where you have post dogs and pickers?
That is one part of our training method, because we do a lot of tower shoots, Western Belt Prairie Wildlife, Little Q, but the training program is we train like we hunt. Walk-ups like you're going to do out west with the tall grass, short grass, woods. We have different blinds. We've got 8 ponds on the property, all with different blinds. They're similar but different, because have you ever hunted the exact same blind twice? No, because they're all different. So we train as we hunt. That's one thing I took that I kind of, Mike was doing it. He just didn't say it like I did, because I pulled it military, train like you fight. So we have to train like we hunt. So we try to do everything. We have layout blinds. We get them into boats and drive them around, retrieve out of the boats. We try to do as much introductions here in training, because one of our adages is a dog shouldn't see something for the first time on opening day.
Okay.
They should not have to, they've never hunted out of a dog hide. Well, that should be done well before season.
Very good. Okay, so Catherine asked, how do you correct a dog who is 125 yards out or so and starts to roll on a bird or starts to rip it apart?
I'm going to put on my go fasters and I'm going to run 125 yards and make the correction. And then I'm going to bring that bird retrieve in real close from that point on, because you're more controlled. And if it's not right in 5 yards, it's not going to be right at 125 yards. So I'm going to bring everything tight so I can make that correction immediately.
Got it.
And then we start extending again.
Makes perfect sense. I was going to pull my tennis shoes up. Tennis shoe training, run them down.
I'll go faster.
All right. Here we go. Hold on a minute. Nancy's got a question. Conventional training uses direct force to get momentum. How do you approach this with your British Labs and plus training?
Direct force, like to get the drive in? I'm not understanding.
I don't totally. Well, there's a force on back process that happens in our world. That is an extension of force fetch that, that extends dogs on some of these big discipline blinds they have to do in our world. I think that's where Nancy's going that. So she said, how do you approach, and I guess to get momentum going for on a blind to establish a dog going away from you, I guess. But you kind of described that with your backs, the 30 days of backs.
Yeah.
Isn't
Well, we
that
get
where
it.
it begins?
Yes. Plus, we use a keyword. If the dog's not sure where it's at or whatever, or it's a long bird, I'm gonna get their eye contact. I'm gonna say dead bird, and then I'm gonna
Okay.
line them, and that tells them just go.
Okay.
And
Which,
they stop and push them back, and so that 30 days of backs is real important because as you know, left and rights are way easier than back if you're trying to push
right.
a dog back 300 yards.
And then some of those, that's all they want to do is 300 yards and they won't go over. Um,
Correct.
all right. Jenny says for chewing, etc. After you run to him, what are you going to do? Okay. Back to that dog that you ran out there 125 yards. What do you do then?
I'm going to get the bird from him if it's not already disposed of down his throat, and I'm going to get those jowls a little bit, and show them I'm the boss, and put them back on lead, and they get no more retrieves that day
Okay.
because the retrieve, you got to think of the dog's motivators: retrieve, food, being with the pack. So just like we talk about vocal dogs, if we're online, say we're doing introduction to gunfire, and one of them's vocal, well, he gets moved back 10 yards. If he whines again, he gets moved back 20 yards. He gets moved back 30 yards. He's quiet, we come back to 20. If he's quiet, we come to 10. So we do that. The big thing is for something like that, you don't want to put your hands on them because they see that as a pet, or hush,
Okay.
hush, and kind of pet them. Well, they're getting rewarded for bad behavior.
Okay. Okay. See if this is correct. David Peterson, he's sent some nice stuff in. I think their trailing memories help with the momentum on going on blinds.
I agree
Is that
100%.
correct?
I agree
Okay.
100%.
All right, David. Good comment there. Well, I told you we were going to keep talking. This is probably our time because you wanted to talk about Wildrose, the versatility of these dogs.
Yes.
Give us some examples.
So we have narcotics dogs. We have a dog in Seattle right now. It's actually the puppy on the Proclaim bag, a little yellow puppy, Quinn, who we started, police department wanted to buy him. So and Mike, being an ex-cop, thought it was all super great and cool to play some cop stuff. So we started teaching the dog how to hunt in cabinets under vehicles. And they estimated that dog in his first year found enough fentanyl to kill about 10 million people. They say he can search a house in 20 minutes that takes humans 3 to 4 hours. And he hasn't missed anything. And we got another drug dog in Pontotoc. We've got diabetic alert dogs, therapy dogs, venture dogs, cadaver dogs, arson dogs. So they're just so very versatile, and they can do one thing in the morning and switch to something else in the afternoon.
Perfect timing, Vicky. Can you elaborate on your adventure dog program and the benefits of it?
Oh, Vicky's a long time adventure dog person for Wildrose. Thanks for joining us, Vicky. So the adventure dog, it came out. Mike's been training in Colorado every summer for I think 16 years,
Mm-hmm.
16 or 17, and he's seen all these out of control dogs around town and on the trail. He's like, man, he goes, would it be nice to have an obedient dog to hike with and do outdoor
Okay.
stuff? So an adventure dog is someone who leads an outdoor lifestyle, but doesn't hunt, but wants a well-disciplined and trained dog. So part of the adventure dog program here at the kennel, we have paddle boards, we've got kayaks, teach them to side-by-side, trail assistance items, all that stuff to make it just a well-rounded companion. And what we do with the adventure dog, one of the things we do is we take them through gunfire. Because think about how often you're hiking, you may hear gunfire in the distance.
Okay.
We want them to be desensitized to the gunfire so they don't freak out, and then get really gun shy by hearing a gunshot close by. So we take them through backs and gunfire.
So
And
these
then
aren't necessarily dogs that are hunting dogs that are also adventure dogs.
these are straight adventure dogs.
Okay.
Now, a lot of our clients do cross train for adventure dogs, like Mattis, my personal dog. He's a master trekker. One of the things we haven't done in Oxford, Mississippi is teach him to heel in snow skis.
Oh.
A little warm down here for that. But you have to get 13 out of 16 merits to become a master trekker.
Okay, so when you say adventure dog, you're not just talking about a dog that people can take hiking. Are we talking about a certification? Are we talking about a competition?
Certification. So we start off with trail rated, adventure dog certified, and master trekker. So they have to
Okay,
complete all these tasks and send in the videos or
I
come
got
to
it.
an adventure dog workshop.
And this is this certification is specific to Wildrose.
Yes, sir.
Okay, very good. You know, before I show you a couple of your versatile dogs, and we can have some fun with that. Um, the one thing I was really struck, we started talking about the size of these dogs because I said, you know, I think of big, blocky, and you told me what your average male is how big?
55 to 65 pounds. And 65 is starting to get on the big range.
Wow. I mean, now when I look at the pictures of those dogs, they don't look overly big, but when I think of the blocky dog, I think of 70-pound dogs.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I had a field champion that was 105. And now when I ran him, I mean, he could look me in the eye almost. And he was a big teddy bear of a dog, but who wants a 105-pound dog in a duck boat?
We ended up adopting this big dog, Tyler, and this is way back before I even knew who Wildrose was. He was running 3 miles 3 days a week and fit as a fiddle, was 123 pounds, had a head like an anvil, and the biggest baby, did not care a thing about picking up a duck.
What kind of, you know, a lot of our field trial lines are having a lot of issues with cranial cruciate, knee damage, like like an ACL at a football player.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you know, and it's you know, there's genetic testing now, and it's pretty bloodline specific, and it's something we're trying to eradicate. What about your dogs? Are you you know, we used to, hip dysplasia was the big thing 30 years ago. Now it's knees and elbows.
We're not really having any elbow or knee problems, so to speak. You know, the problem is that hip dysplasia was ignored so long, it's just ingrained in the DNA, and it's going to pop its ugly head just randomly, and it's just terrible. But no, we haven't had a lot of knee problems. One big thing, Mike had gone to a canine orthopedic symposium,
Mm-hmm.
and big thing the guy talked about is what's kind of hurting some of the field trial dogs because they're going straight from the truck to the line and not getting warmed up.
Well, we're preaching on that anymore. You're right.
Yeah,
Like any athlete.
And that's what part of our cyclical training model is. The first thing we do is a ramp up, energy control, and focus session before we even start any retrieves.
Do you do any classic conditioning programs, roading type things that are?
Not really for our labs. Guy boards a lot of pointers and stuff down in Texas, and they do road the pointers.
Okay, yeah, and that has been common. And I guess when I started doing it, when I got associated a little bit more with some of the world of sled dogs, and I realized our dogs aren't nearly as fit as they could be. And you know, like any athlete, the better physical condition they're in, the less they're going to get injured. I mean, and it's just, it stands to reason. So, all right, let me I want you to talk about. Well, hold on a minute. Nancy says, all right, here we go. I'm very excited about getting my first British Lab. What's the most important thing to know about starting British Labs?
The backgrounding process is not a lot different for any breed. I think your key focus is building the relationship and the foundational behaviors, your lead work, your heel work, your recall, and make it fun. I want to be the bringer of fun. I want everything good to happen within 3 feet of me with a puppy. And so not a lot of big differences in backgrounding dogs, whether it's a pointer, cocker, flusher, pug. You know, you want a good, well-rounded, disciplined dog. what I found from my first back dog I raised is I let him be a puppy way more now than I did then because I was so focused on the rules. I was getting wrapped in the minutia in my head. I was a combination of every dictator you've ever seen rolled into one person with that puppy. Now she turned out great, but she probably didn't have as much fun as she should have. So don't. I always tell people, don't get so wrapped up in the rules and the weeds that you don't have fun and the dog doesn't have fun, because otherwise, what's the point? You're going to have bad days. We all do.
You know, I had a client who said this, and it's so true. He said to me, he said, in a department store life, this dog game, that's the toy department. And if we can't have fun in the toy department, we're in trouble.
Correct.
All right, tell me about this dog.
Juice Kiffin. Lane Kiffin, the head coach of Ole Miss football, his dog he got from us a couple years ago. He's now the unofficial mascot of Ole Miss football.
What's he got in his mouth?
He's got the kickoff tee.
Wait a minute. How does this work?
So once a game, depending on when we score and stuff like that, I will line him for the kickoff tee after we kick off, and he'll retrieve it back to the sideline.
All right. Is that him?
That's him. That was today.
What? I'm shaking my head here now. We both got a hat here. All right. I got to bring my Tennessee hat. You got your Ole Miss hat. I'll tell you what. I thought I liked you. I mean, until you started telling me this stuff. But and you had another hat sitting next to you.
I do, just in case. I know how you Tennessee fans are, and I don't want to get my head hurt. So I'll put this on in case you all throw some mustard at us.
I don't know what you guys know, but the last time Tennessee and Ole Miss came to Knoxville, Tennessee, well, if you don't know anything about it, Tennessee fans are not big fans of Lane Kiffin because of some past. So they were booing him already, and then the game got tight, and then the rest. Next thing you know, they were throwing mustard things at the down out in the field. So we had some fun laughing about that. And well, Russ goes hotty toddy.
Hotty toddy.
All right, I got one more serious question here. I told you I was going to keep you about an hour, and that's where we are here. But let's. Catherine has a question, and let me pop this up. Catherine says, just a question regarding correcting dogs at distances. I'm 71 years old. I can't run 125 yards to correct a dog to my commands. What do I do in your program?
So now, if your dog is not responding at distance, you have to shorten the distance. If we're struggling, we're going to go back 2 steps in our program and reinforce the previous training. So when we start, and then everything really, really close. So you can correct them right there, whether it's a long line or, just your verbal, whatever, and then start extending the distance. If they start messing up again at 50 yards, guess what? Coming back to 10. And we're just going to keep doing that over and over and over till they get in their mind that it becomes a predictable habit. That's what I'm looking for. Repetition and consistency to the point of a predictable habit is what we're looking for.
And I tell you what, I mean, this sounds a lot like, and I mentioned this earlier, that I've gone to a number of Border Collie herding events and seen the top ones in the country. I just went to the Nationals. And I started to ask them a little bit about, all right, these dogs are making decisions and have to be in control at 500-600 yards. And I asked them about an I said, how do you do this? And they described it very much like you. It's most of the initial control stuff's done in very close, and it's mostly positive reinforcement because these Border Collies are on the more delicate side, I guess, until they get too excited.
Till they're not.
But anyways, it's what great stuff. And I tell you what, we had a great night, and
Absolutely.
I guess Tom, I want to ask you, is there something Wildrose message you want to share with us? Any parting thoughts?
A couple things. One, you can find us at uklabs.com. Wildrose Kennels on all the social medias, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. Sign up for our newsletter. Comes out 6 times a year. It's free. We've got all kinds of cool stuff, recipes, training tips, photography tips, a little bit of everything. But my parting thought, I guess, is one, find the right breed of dog for your lifestyle. A Newfoundland doesn't need to live in a 1-bedroom apartment.
Okay.
Find the breed that's going to satisfy your lifestyle. Be fair to the dog. Always take the dog's quality of life and well-being first. 2, don't forget to have fun. That's one of the biggest things. I mean, like
Toy department.
100%, and we're lucky. I always tell people if I'm having a bad day, I go play with puppies. Puppies make everything better. So just have fun with it. And don't expect a platinum dog with a copper work ethic. Okay. You have to put the work in.
That's well said. One last little question, and how do you end a training session? I always feel like the bad guy.
Never end the training session on a loss. Find something that your dog, they're going to succeed at. It could be something as simple as a trailing memory, or we've got a ramp set up that all kinds of, different levels and stuff they walk on. Take them on that. Tell them they're a good boy, a good girl. While dogs do not process like we do, would you rather go home from work with a man, Pat, you had a great day today, or Pat, come and sign this counseling statement? So I want them to end each session on a positive note. Even if it's been the worst training day of my life, I'm going to find something that they're going to succeed at. So when they get put in the pen, they're a good dog.
Fantastic, Tom. Well, I'm going to show you a couple things because you're going to say, well, how'd it go? How did people like it? Well,
awesome. Thanks,
all right.
Richard.
Todd says, thank you.
Thanks, Todd.
We've got.
Thanks for joining us.
Philip says, thanks for putting this together. I'm just putting my kennel together and offering training. I appreciate all the insights.
And Philip, there is no perfect method. Learn from everybody. I learn every day. Thanks, Rhonda.
So anyways, that's coming in faster than I can put it up, So I guess we did good, buddy. Truly a joy to have you. I had a lot of fun meeting you. We were at the Southeast Wildlife Expo, and I'm sure we'll see each other again. And maybe we'll be on the sidelines somewhere. You're going to be on the sidelines this weekend, huh?
Yeah, I will. We got Oklahoma coming to town. I will.
Boy.
Yep. This could go either way. They're always tough.
Well, I mean, just I hear like excellent. I mean, there's just coming like one after another here. So, Tom, you're awesome. Your story is fantastic. I look forward to seeing you again. Thank you so much for taking the time to be here. And like I said to everybody, if you want to see this again, if you didn't see all of it, we will have the replay up within a day or two. And I'll make sure you get that, Tom, in case some of your folks would like to see it.
Absolutely.
And, well, I guess with that being said, let's wrap this bad boy up. And we're going to thank Tom. We're going to thank Wildrose. I'm certainly going to thank Purina Pro Plan for all of their support. And probably most importantly, I want to thank all these wonderful people at home that spent their evening with us because, I never get tired of talking dogs and talking to dog people and having fun. So it's again, when my dad said, don't spend your life behind the desk, it was the greatest piece of advice I ever got. Yep. So good stuff. Good night, everybody. Tom, good night. And
thanks, Pat. Thanks, everybody.
We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
Yes, sir. Bye.
Training the dogs is one thing.
But training the people, that's really where it is, because now they can be better to their dogs. Their dogs can trust them more, and they're going to be more successful. And I've done a lot of coaching of people at nationals, and it's really what turns me on, is putting together the dog-handler combination and helping them understand each other. And well, success is bound to happen when you can do that.